Hello and welcome to the Hardy Brain, the show that takes athletic, introverted entrepreneurs and leaders and transforms them into ironclad brain performers. I'm your host, Dr. David Hardy. And today on our show, we've got another amazing guest. He is a former Olympian at the 1972 Munich Games, a chiropractor, and he is a champion who builds champions. He's worked with the likes of Lance Armstrong, Bono, Tiger Woods, and Sir Richard Branson. Welcome to the show, Dr. Jeff Spencer. How you doing there?
Couldn't be better. I savor in each and every conversation that I have. And thanks again, David, for this very generous opportunity for us to sort of till the common ground and poke around and see what's there.
Well, I'm excited about this. Every time I've talked to you, I've gotten so much gold from the conversations we have. It is absolutely amazing to be in the presence of you and the accomplishments you've done. Let's just go back here. You've been cycling since age 10 yourself.
Yeah.
And
It's
you competed in the Olympics and cycling's been a huge part of your life, has it not?
Well, it was probably the first passion that I had. And when I was 7, I wanted to be an Olympian. I thought that'd be cool because I saw on television the athletes walking into the stadium for the opening day ceremonies. And I just had this gravity within me that kind of pulled me into that idea, and I couldn't get it out of my head. And I had no idea how I was going to do it. What am I going to do at 7? And so what happened when I was around 10, I was asked to go for a ride with some of the boys in my neighborhood that were like 7 to 10 years older than me. And they were part of an active cycling club. So I hustled up a bike, and it was a 25-mile bike ride. And I didn't even know what 25 miles was. So I rode with those guys. And when we got back from the 25-mile bike ride, those guys were dead. Just freaking dead, and I wasn't. And so people were like, "Wait a minute, what is this?" So that was the first kind of glimpse. There's something unusual here, and I ultimately, through a series of chain reactions, I met my coach, who was a 5-time Olympian, he's a 3-time Olympian, 5-time national champion, and he kind of chose me. He chose me, and he said, I understand you got Olympic aspirations. And I was sitting there looking at this guy, and I said, yeah. And he said, well, I'd love to help you, and I'd like you to invite you to my training group. And we're all Olympic champions and world champions, and you're not, but I want you to come. And if you understand what it is that we're talking about, and you see what we're doing, and it awakens something in you, because I can't make you an Olympian. You have to kind of be an Olympian by constitution. Then I can support you in that process. So I was really lucky, because he said, it's not just about will and talent, trying harder. It's really about learning the skill of how to win. Winning is a learned skill, and I'm going to teach you that, which you did. And so that obviously extends beyond just cycling, but it kind of goes everywhere in terms of life. And so he was the first of 3 angels that I had in my life, because my parents really weren't there they to do anything. They weren't they didn't hold me back by saying I can't do it or whatever. But so it was a perfect match for me at a perfect time. So that's how it happened. And so I dedicated myself to 10 years because I saw a guy wearing an Olympic t-shirt, and I said, man, I want that t-shirt. The only way you could get it, there was no online at that point in time. You had to earn it.
You had to go through people.
Yeah, you had to become an Olympian to get it. And so my odds of becoming Olympian.
So explain this part to me. Winning as a skill. What do you mean by that? What sort of, obviously, in high performers, there is kind of this grit and determination that people just have to have, right? But I've seen a lot of people with that never make it anywhere or fall short.
Because you don't know how to
win. So explain this, winning as a skill mindset.
Winning as a skill. So, one of the things that I did, I sat down with a napkin at a restaurant, and I said, well, okay, I've helped athletes win gold medals. I've helped recording stars become epic. I've helped people in business become iconic. What's the common thread here? There's technical differences between, but the process, there's some commonality here. And so I started scribbling on the napkin, and I realized that I only took instruction from my coach at that time, but then dissecting it later, this is what it looks like. It's like I realized that there are two parts to this. There's a preparation side, and then there's a performance side. And kind of my philosophy is that you do the homework and the test is easy. And so on the preparation side, there are like 5 things that need to happen. You have to make sure that you got the right goal. It doesn't have to be a big, hairy, audacious goal. It has to be the right goal. And there's a criteria for that. And you have to understand why you're doing it. There needs to be a motive behind it that you can name that calls you to a bigger game, because when you understand what's behind it, then you have the drive to be able to push through the obstacles that are always there in pursuit of any particular type of goal. And then the third part of preparation is to understand the impact. Like, what's the impact on my achievement going to be on myself, on other people, on the planet, et cetera? And when you see that, then it gives you a different level of conviction. So you can see how you're kind of strengthening your position by gaining further clarity on this right goal. I understand why I'm doing it. I understand the impact. And then the other side of this is, do I have the mind to do this? Like, I mean, it's not necessarily going to be easy, but do I have the mind to do this? Because if you have the mind to do it, then you have the courage to step into things that may be intimidating to others. And so the mind has to be there. And then finally, in the preparation side, do you have the resources? Time, energy, team, materials, supplies, financing, health, etc. And so all those things are prerequisites for being prepared enough to then begin the journey. And so the observation is that on the performance side, you need to get out of the gate cleanly, meaning that when you create your plan and you've got your structure in place, this is kind of analogous to a racehorse that can win the Kentucky Derby. If it can win the Kentucky Derby because training times are indicative of that, but it trips out of the gate, then the horse can't win. And it's exactly the same thing for us in pursuit. You have to have a clean start out of the gate. And that's a very special transitional moment that a lot of people don't think about. They just think, well, if I'm prepared, I just need to go. Well, not really. You got to make sure that you're prepared. You have to know that. There has to be a criteria that you look at that confirms that you are ready. And those 5 steps is what I saw. And then,
awesome. Like this makes perfect sense with sport, but you're also working with businesses and entrepreneurs. And there's no defined end line. There's no, okay, you've made it through the race, you've won. There's so many. And two, it's like a day-to-day grind of a lot of nothing happening until something does happen. So kind of walk us through the business side of it then. Like, does all these kind of sports analogies and mindsets for sport change with business, or are you seeing similar patterns?
No, locker room and boardroom, it's all the same thing. I mean, there are different technical sides to it. What pencil should I use versus what gear should I be using? But yet the challenges associated with it are exactly the same. Exactly the same. People don't think that there is, but 100%, it's exactly the same thing. I don't even work with athletes. I was a chiropractor. That's part of what I did in my profession. But, right now I'm in the advisory space where I'm working with people, not just on the physical side, but on the use side. How are you going to show up? Are you going to make the right decisions? What's your state of readiness? Do you have the right goal? Do you really know how to move something forward? So I haven't seen any distinction, quite honestly, between the two. I mean, I think sports is not a destination. It's like, this would be the equivalent. If you're in business and you want to make $10,000 a month, well, that would be the equivalent. I want to win this trophy. It's exactly the same thing.
Fair enough.
It is. So, and it's, you kind of never get to the finish line because, you're always changing. The world around you is always changing. And we're discovering our untapped potentials as we go. And we're learning the skill of winning in the process. And what I just said to you prior was only about the preparation. It wasn't really about the 5 steps of what you're going to have to execute to be able to get from start to finish. That's the performance side of it. So I have not found that there's any distinction whatsoever.
Fair
I mean,
enough.
tech,
Maybe walk us through a case. Like you've got someone who's business savvy, like a Richard Branson.
yeah.
How are you working with him? What sort of problems is somebody of that magnitude coming to you with?
Well, I think the common denominator here is that we're all part of a species. We're
Mm-hmm.
all people, and we have a biologic consistency that we all share. So that's like the common thread that runs through everything, and that's infallible. There are no exemptions from dealing with their hardwired biology. Everybody's got a fight or flight mechanism that gets first dibs at every second of our life, and people usually make decisions, if they come from that, about what they stand to lose, not what they stand to gain. But we also have an instinct, which is to seek, and you look it up. What are our biological hardwired instincts? Well, it's the top one isn't procreation or safety or food. It's really seeking. And what does that mean? Well, it means that we're hardwired to seek what? What are we seeking? We're seeking, meaning and contribution and value to fill the void that we have to live a full and vital life. And so that
Uh,
is a common thread that we have. And I've never seen that not to be the case, whether you're talking about Tiger, whether you're talking about, Sir Richard Branson or whatever, it's all the same. We share a common biology here that we can't escape, that does play a role in how we respond and how we think and how we make decisions. And so, when we talk about the Bransons, the Tigers, the Lances, whoever, they have evolved to a place where they can compete or perform, is probably a better word, at that level. But we all have a similar capacity. And every one of us is unique in all of human history. There's only one David, there's only one Jeff that can contribute something to humanity that is significant, even though we may compare it against other things and not think it's so. But that is our impact on humanity. And every one of us has something that we're an expert in, for sure.
right.
And if we connect with that and we cultivate and grow that, then we make the highest contribution to humanity. But then we're living in alignment with our abilities as innately hardwired into us. And so that's also its different process. So, it's hard to compare somebody that's just starting with someone of high notoriety, but it doesn't mean that they can't get there. And it doesn't mean that they can't live a life of distinction by closing the gap to fill the void.
Right. Now, in your coaching experience, then, where do you find kind of the hardest stage for people to get through? Is it the starting point? Is it midpoint? Or is it when they've reached the pinnacle of their field? What's sort of the patterns or trends you found with your 40 Olympic athlete, gold medal athletes, your 400,000 hours? Like you've seen a lot. So what are these trends, patterns with the different time periods that people may go through in their journey?
Yeah, well, that would be the performance side of things. The journey of execution is really the performance side. And so, the observation is really this. Like, number one, it's like you got to get out of the gate safely, and you have to build momentum consistently and slowly over time. And you got to have the right goal, because if you're not having the right goal, you may be setting yourself up for failure. It's not because you don't have capacity. It's just that it's too big of a goal too soon. That's not uncommon. And there's also people trying really hard to try to get to the finish line faster. And you get about 20 or 30 years of functional reserve on board that you're etching away at if you are pushing too hard, too quick. But then you're going to blow up around 40, meaning there may be adrenal fatigue. There may be other things. People are dying of heart attacks, in their late 30s, early 40s. There may be a devastating relationship, a breakup. There may be financial ruin because a person's too heavily leveraged. And all those things are like hidden time bombs that are there that they don't know about. And we think that, pushing hard enough will get us to the goal faster. Well, yeah, but if you blow yourself up, then, you've really not done a service to your talent and your purpose here, basically on this planet. And so when I look at the other sides to this, like the minefield, a couple of other, I think, really key observations here is that people, what they also feel is that once they get over the most difficult part, they think that they're going to be able to coast their way on momentum to the finish line. And that's not true.
Right.
Because we've all seen the t-shirt that says, believe, believe, believe on it. I mean, that's kind of like the mantra, right? Well, believing is one thing, but knowing is completely different. And when people generally get to a point where they're over the hump, again, they believe the momentum is going to carry them to the finish line when it's not. So they get stuck and trapped in, what I call the daily grind, because you have to finish the job. And the way you finish the job is that you have to take getting over the hump, and then you need to fortify and upgrade all the processes that need to be there to get to a point where you have a confirmation that you can do it. And so an example for myself would be, and this is a general statement, it's not just about the Olympics, but, for me, I believed that I could become an Olympian because of my training times were comparable with Olympians. Okay. Well, I hadn't tested myself yet. I believed I could because of what I saw, but the belief went to knowing when I went to the national championship and I was paired with the existing champion, and I beat him in the first of 2 rounds. And so when I beat him, I confirmed to myself that I can do this through an experience that I had that confirmed it. And so that's when I knew I could do it. So again, believing and knowing are 2 completely different things.
Right.
And then once you know you could do it, it's almost like game over. But there's one exception here, is that when let's say a pilot brings a plane into land, does he speed up to get the plane on the ground faster? No. He slows down to make sure that he crosses the finish line safely, and he doesn't let up until the plane is at the deplaning place where people then enter into the terminal itself. And so another risk is that when people think that they're close to the finish, they let up, and you're not done until you're done. And it would be equivalent of an Olympic sprinter, in a 100-meter dash, holding up. If you watch them in slow motion, they always let up like a meter before the finish line, and I've seen people trip because they didn't finish. Yeah, because they didn't finish the job. I see this all the time. Mm-hmm. So when you look at the performance side of what my observation was, is number one, you have to have a safe start where you're out of the gate and you didn't trip and you didn't botch the start. Because if you trip out of the gate, then you can't win. It's not possible. And then what happens is that when you have a confirmation when things are up and moving, then you think, hey, this is easy, man, because my plan's working. Well, hold on a second here. It's like, you've had an early success here, but you're not done. You still got 4 steps to go, but you don't know that. You think, well, because we got out of the gate, it's going to be great. Well, that's called what I call the honeymoon phase. You think everything's great, but what happens to all honeymoons? If you've ever been married,
they end.
Yeah, they all end, right? But you don't know that. So when the luster wears off and the enthusiasm starts to drop, then this is another problem, because people think, well, you know what? I've lost my motivation. So, maybe this isn't the right plan for me. I don't know if I can really do this. So they completely misinterpreted the situation. I mean, honeymoons are supposed to wear off. And once your plan meets reality. And so at that point, you need to have a reality check where you stop and you pause. It's like 2 lovers, like, okay, let's sit down. Let's talk about this. Let's have a reality check. Right. What do we need to clean up that we thought was going to take us there, but we know that it doesn't? What do we need to do? So that reality check is really important. So, how it is you make up and then you think, okay, everything's going to be great moving forward. Well, hold on a second. Once you've kind of had that reality conversation, then you get into what I call the daily grind,
Right.
because the daily grind is where you're showing up for duty. You're putting all the time in, you're doing all the right stuff, but guess what? You're not getting any close back to what you think that you should be getting for the time and effort that you're putting into it. It can get really frustrating,
Oh,
and
yes.
that's generally where people are gonna quit. And here's what I know is that if you watch the instruments and you have the right metrics, and you're not trying to fly the plane by emotion or looking out the window in the clouds, because if you do that, you're going to put the plane on the side of a mountain. But you look at the evidence. Are you gaining momentum? And if you are, well, then the magma chamber of the volcano is starting to build, and eventually you'll get to a place where you're now in belief.
Yeah.
But you're not done in belief. So the daily grind is, look, this is how people screw it up. It's like, either you're not prepared enough and you think you just need to get started because you're going to let the universe fill in all the gaps. Well, I don't know anybody that plays a big game that ever thinks like that. They prepare well enough. They don't need to be perfect in those 5 areas. And once they start, if they bungle it out of the gate, then they're done. They talk themselves out of it, or they misinterpret, the honeymoon phase as being, I can't do this. That's a misinterpretation. It's supposed to happen. And then if you get to the daily grind part where it's hard, man, it's hard. Well, yeah, I know, but you're having to adapt to something that you didn't have any foreknowledge of because you haven't been there yet. That's what it is. That's where you're grooming things. That's where you're kind of reorganizing things. That's where you're fortifying things. You're getting rid of the stuff that shouldn't be there. You're replacing it with stuff that should be there. Should have known that before. Well, how are you supposed to know that if you haven't done it before? So it's a
Right.
natural part of it. And if
Hmm.
you don't talk yourself out of it and quit because you're frustrated because you're not getting what you want fast enough, then you're going to get up one day and you can do it. You've had that experience. I've had that experience where you sit there and you look around, in a room, and you can say, look, that guy's no smarter than me. You can't tell me that this guy is any better than me. I don't believe it. You
Right.
know, I
Now
don't
you
think so.
mentioned the grind,
Yeah.
the frustration of not getting there quick enough
Yeah.
and messing and tripping things up.
Yeah.
And people love also when people crash or do slip up and mess up.
Yeah. The
And
losers love it. Yeah. And the press loves it. Yeah.
yeah, the press loves it. Like
They do.
they ate Lance Armstrong alive, but what was going on in that? Was he just competing in a field that was doing everything that he was, or was it something different? Was he trying to get that extra advantage that others weren't able to have?
Like in what way? I'm just sort of curious so I can
Oh,
give me.
when he
Yeah.
was caught for the doping.
I think that's a very fair question, because I've spent hundreds of hours with Lance at the tour itself, boots on the
Right.
ground behind the scenes, working with him, preparing, so on and so forth. And my job at the tour was to uh, have and create the recovery model for the riders, both mentally and physically. That was kind of like my job, and being a chiropractor, but that's not all I do. That's one part of what I have done. It's a drugless and it's a non-surgical profession, and everything that I did fell within the guidelines of being confirmed clinically that
Right.
the processes were sound, and an ethical sort of guy. It met all the criteria there. So now I had no knowledge of his use of medicine, and I could go anywhere in the Tour de France in the riders' rooms. I had access to them all the time, and I never saw anything. I never heard anything,
Right.
and so I can't comment on the specifics of that because I was not involved with that whatsoever. But what I can tell you is, is this: is that Lance had all of his 7 Tour de France victories stripped away from him.
Yeah, that's got to be
And
tough.
but, well, yeah, it
Yeah.
was. I mean, I'm sure, but they were not awarded to anybody else. Well, wait a minute. Well,
Wow.
how come? How come?
Yeah.
Well, that's because what happened in I was not. I'm an observer to this, I was not directly involved in it, but all the other riders in the peloton admitted to the same thing. And
Yeah.
so that's why they couldn't award them to anybody, because it was a bit of a level playing field. And I can't tell you the specifics of that because I don't know. But all
Yeah.
I know is that, they didn't award them. Well, why? Because everybody else admitted that they were doing it. I mean, worldwide on sort of all the teams, I can't name the specific riders or whatever, but I know that that's what kind of came out, with that. So I guess it was, in a sense, a level playing field. And I kind of guess it was that he won the 7 Tour de France's, because it appears like there was a level playing field in a certain sense,
Right.
and
Well,
I'm not.
also we kind of see this in the business world. Like there is those people that they try to push things too fast, too quick, and then next thing they know, their accountant is getting
Yeah.
questioned and all
Yeah.
sorts of things in that nature as well. So where to kind of in this performance model is it that yeah, you fly too high, you're going to get burned. Or if you're
Yeah.
pushing the envelope way too fast, it's
Yeah.
not going to happen.
Well, I have a couple points to make, if it's okay
Yeah,
here. Is that like, just sort of reflecting back on, the Lance situation, is that one of the things that's important for me, because people ask me about this all the time, and I'm more than happy
I
to
would
talk about
imagine.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah, they do it, and
yeah,
that's okay. I'm more than happy to talk about it. It's like, Lance. It's a bit like the movie The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. I think there's a movie. Yeah, well, what was ugly is that, he sued people that told the truth about him. I mean, that's ugly. And the deception, where kids wanted to grow up to be like him, that's bad.
yeah. Oh,
you
definitely.
know, but,
Yeah,
but there was a good side to this too, is that I've never seen anybody work as hard as Lance did to be able to deliver on the promise of showing up for duty, to honor his talents, and to honor the sponsorship and all that sort of stuff that's involved in this. And the most important take home for me for this conversation is that, some people think he's a demon and a devil. Some people think he's a deity. And it's like, I never thought he was either. I thought he was human.
yes,
And the point I wanted to make here, that I think is really important, is that if we expect to learn our life lessons from perfect people, well, you're not going to learn anything from anybody,
yeah.
quite honestly. And we're the
Hmm.
we're the loser, because our judgment gets in the way of perhaps learning something that could be of intense value, and that discredits us, because we're perhaps missing something that can make the difference, where we can make our unique contribution to humanity. So that's that side of it. The other part that I wanted to say about this, in response to what you said earlier, is that, um, I think there has to be an ongoing conversation that begins really early in life, about what are the rules that we play by, and what are the consequences of choices. And I could tell you that generally, with very precocious people put them on a pedestal, their family, their friends, the press, etc., where sometimes, generally speaking, there's no sound counsel behind the scenes about the possible risks and liabilities of where you are. So, for example, with my daughter, who we adopted from Colombia at the age of 10, is a very unusual adoption. And that's its own story. It's my most important thing that I've ever done in my entire life, and most
Yes, yeah,
difficult as well. And is that, I would tell my daughter, like, her name is Kin, Kin. I said, look, Kin, I need to talk to you about something, and I'm not going to tell you how to live. I'm not chewing you out, but I just want to put something out there so that you're aware of it. And that if it starts to arise, we come back and have another conversation about it. And she never did not listen to me, because I wasn't giving her a lecture. And I feel like, we as parents and we as advisors, um, who are a little bit beyond where the other people are, and they're seeking our counsel to get our advice, and we can kind of see their future and where they're headed. If we can bring to them the probabilities of downside risks, or a downside risk of what we're doing, then we've kind of preset the stage for a deeper conversation. So, I mean, if you look at Lance and you look at
Right.
Tiger, they both have black eyes for different reasons, you know.
Yeah, and on that point too, yeah, because I do have very opinions on this as well, especially kind of being in the sporting world, not to
Yeah,
the extent you have been, obviously, but yeah, there is a lot more pressure, wear and tear, and damage that high elite people do to themselves. And you mentioned adrenal fatigue with business people.
yeah,
And that also is notorious for people who are searching for the next thing that's going to help them perform better.
yes,
And I do think that there's kind of this push now to make it safe, though, that some of the traditional performance enhancing stuff was not good for a person, and it's you're stealing now from your future
yes, right,
type thing.
absolutely,
And yeah, with this all being said, there's like, even if we took cold laser, like cold laser is a way to heal, and it enhances and speeds it up. There's basically no side effects though. So I do think there's like a push now to get people to be able to heal and perform, because yeah, they've got a schedule and everything that's way past everything. But
100%.
the thing you mentioned is, of course, that yeah, there's rules and things to follow. So it's kind of a push now for both, is that okay, well, I think yeah, some things could be developed better to help people that obviously are getting more wear and tear than anyone else out there, and also that is safe and not detrimental and not telling kids to to go out and do something dangerous and stupid. So
Yeah, yeah, and just sort of a couple points I'd like to mention here, if I could, is that like the model that I created for healing injuries at the tour and preparing the riders and their recovery from day to day. You know, one of the beautiful things about that experience is that, you know, the administration and the sports directors there gave me free license to do whatever I wanted to do, because they felt, well, you know, you're the expert, you know better than we what to do to be able to accommodate what the needs are. And so I was able to create a model of recovery that was unsurpassed at that time. You know, we was using cold lasers. We were, you know, using uh, different frequencies and different microcurrents and things that were available but weren't on the radar, in a sense that it was a little bit ahead of its time in terms of notoriety and publication, etc. But yet it was all there, you know, and all the stuff that was together as a collective. We had such an advantage over the other teams because of our use of other devices like the cold laser, for sure. You know, I brought that to the. We were using kinesiotape. We were using frequency-specific microcurrent. We were using biofeedback devices to be able to see resonant frequencies on things that could that were invisible but could be problematic later. We were able to, you know, eliminate things, you know, proactively that weren't there yet. You know, we weren't just waiting for something to happen, then show up with the, you know, fire engine to put the fire out.
right, yeah.
You
And
know, it
all of
was a
these are
really,
catching up to kind of what would happen if somebody was using a substance that, once again, has too many side effects to be used, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like, and people don't
It,
need to go that route, because there are other ways to
there
help
are,
people.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
fortunately, because it's like, I mean, this may be a little bit aggressive to say, but you know, my experience in some professional sports teams is that they have a vertical hierarchy of decision making. And you know, some of the decisions are made by the accountants and the lawyers that really don't know anything about, you know, building a structure and using things that, you know, have clinical validation and support and that are highly ethical, that, you know, do have a basis of scientific again advocacy and effectiveness. they're kind of resistant to stuff like that. And, one of the reasons why we were so dominant is because we weren't trapped by our traditions and our histories, where a lot of people, were, we've always done it this way, or, I don't know, I need 5 or 6 more studies to prove something, where you already have some bodies of evidence, but it's just not part of the common conversation, and it was really, I mean, for me, it was such an amazing privilege to be given carte blanche to, hey man, build the system.
Yep.
It wasn't
Well,
a
well,
vertical
right
hunt.
now in your life, you have carte blanche, and you've had a major injury.
Yeah, well,
Can you kind of tell us what happened, and like,
yeah,
and how you're getting better? And like, we're talking, you are more fit than most 20-year-olds out there, and what,
right.
kind of mid late 70s?
Yeah, in mid 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what
Wow.
that's supposed to feel or look like, but yeah. So
Yeah.
we moved to Boise, Idaho from Orange County, California. And so, yeah, we were remodeling our house, and there was I had an accident, where something involving a staircase, and I tore the quadratus tendon, which is the tendon that you need to have to be able to walk. I tore it off the kneecap. I
Wow.
mean, it's like, that would be, I don't know what the equivalent would be, but it's like a rubber band breaking, and then it separates from its counterpart, right? Yeah.
Like,
So
I've seen that with the Achilles tendon happening all the time,
yeah,
but
yeah.
never with the
Oh,
quads.
yeah, man. When I looked it up and
Oh.
I was researching it, it said, Achilles is bad, but if the quad goes off, dude, just you got to expect that this is going to be a hard road, man. Which it has been, and it's because it's the first time in 65 years that I've been off my bicycle until last week. Yeah, so
Wow.
it was really unique. I thought, what am I going to do here, man? That's my foundation. That's my anchor. That's my reference point for sanity. And I was really surprised, because it's like, okay, I got this injury and it's going to heal. I got the right people on it. I'm compliant. I'm not going to get frustrated, because I'm just not inclined to do that. So I was really surprised by that. And it's a long process. It's like 9 months to really kind of get back to where you could compete again. And 9 months for me, look at the average male life expectancy in the US is 73. So I'm already on borrowed time. And now you're telling me it's going to be like another 9 months. What's going on here, man? I want my money back. So, I'm back on my bike. Thank you for that. I've had, and what I'll say to this is that I didn't try to play my own doctor on this. I went to
Right.
people so I could get an objective look
But
at
you
this.
know who to go to.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I went to the best people that I could find, and they gave me really good advice. Like, you got to take this slow. You can't outrun this thing. And I'm very compliant, with it. So, I've got a smile on my face today because I started riding my bike last week. I mean, it's not pretty. I'm going like a half a mile an hour. I mean, it's not pretty, but man, it's great to kind of get over the hump myself and know that a full and complete recovery is possible. And I'm on my way to that.
Wow. So what's your goal, and perceived frustration points, everything you mentioned earlier?
Well, it's interesting. And this is the way I've always been. Don't ask me why, but it's like, I don't have a lot of frustration,
Nice.
because I've never had massive aspirations for myself to achieve anything. I've always lived my life by, I know that if I answer the calling that's put into my consciousness, where I feel a gravity towards something, when I show up for duty and I faithfully pursue that, it always gets to a place that I could not have conceived of in advance. But it took a lot less energy to do it, because the frustration equivalent is really low. And that's quite a bit different, as I understand it, from the way most people do it. They pick a goal and they make it as big as possible, and they push hard to get there. And I've always found that that doesn't work for me. And it's not like I've shied away from, the Olympics was a 10-year commitment with no guarantee I'd make it, because my odds were 1 in 360 million that I would make it, coming from a welfare family, but I did. I showed up for duty. I worked hard. I got the calling as a kid to do that. I did the same thing with my art. I showed my art in the best galleries in New York City. Same thing, with my advisor. I work with some household names, and I'm passionate about what I do. I've been an author. I'm an adoptive father, and none of those things I ever did to showcase myself or to prove myself worthy when people said I couldn't do it. I've never been motivated by that. It just doesn't. It
Right.
just doesn't
Yeah.
work for me. And I feel like that's part of, I guess, the longevity and the kind of youthful vitality that I carry with me is that I'm not. I'm not complacent. I'm not. It's like, as I tell my wife, I don't mind losing as long as it's not me. But when I say that, I'm talking about, am I showing up for duty? Am I answering the callings that are gifted to me into my consciousness? And the answer is, yeah. And at my age, I could tell you this, is that, it's really important. I don't know how many sands of grain I got left. I don't know. And I'm not thinking about it,
No,
but
absolutely not.
yeah, not, I'm not limiting anything. I'm just saying, that it's real important that with the reconciliation that, of life, that, we can only do so much. There's only so much time in this dimension that we live in. And, we're going to be accountable for what we do with our time and our energy and our talents. And, to walk off the field kind of knowing that you've showed up for duty, you've answered the call, you've been faithful to the mission, you've respected your talents. You can walk off the field knowing that there's nothing more that you could do. And that to me is like really important.
I, we can tell, like, yeah. But on top of this, that's kind of the past stuff for you. Um, and yeah, maybe present with things. But I think you're on a new field. And when I've talked to you before, what you were talking about is how do you share all this knowledge with people?
Yeah.
And I'm going to throw that back at you. Like, how are you sharing all the knowledge that you've gained, that you've experienced, that yeah, more people need to find out about? What are the avenues and channels for people to find that?
Well, I appreciate that. Well, first and foremost, many of the clients that I have that I work with in an advisory capacity, they're huge influencers, so I know that they take a lot of the stuff that I share with them that works and they disseminate that as well. So that's one channel, obviously. And the other channels that I'm looking for, like right now, and it's a question of time and energy to make that happen, is to archive what I know to be true. And I guess the other thing I want to say here that's really important is that everything that I say to people whenever I talk and they ask for my perspective on things, it's always through the lens of what history has proven itself to be in my experience. And if you see things showing up over and over and over again, you could take them as real. And that's very different than a pop psychology that hasn't really stood the test of time, but it sounds good. It
Right.
hasn't, been challenged against its merits yet. And so for that, I do feel that there's an important part for me, because I know that I can provide some insight on how to become an exponential potential player in your own life by uh, showing up and living a quality life yourself. But also part of that is knowing that you've contributed to humanity, et cetera. And that's part of what I'm kind of working through now as I'm working, with my existing clients and things like that. There's all sorts of possibilities here. There's podcasts, of course, there's books, there's other things that are right now under consideration to make that happen.
Wow.
And I think, yeah. So I'm excited about that. And
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm really passionate about this because it's like, what wags my tail, is I'm the guy in the back of the room in the auditorium when the awards are handed out. I don't
Yeah.
wear the team T-shirt. I don't, and when I see somebody, most important thing for me is that when I see a person go from uncertainty, belief, but they go to knowing where they stand up straighter, because now they know that they can do it because they have the personal belief in self, because they have a body of evidence, they have the tools to be able to make this happen. They become and will become a force of nature. That's what wags my tail, and there's only so much of me to go around. And so
on that point though, too, a lot of people think the alpha wolf is in the front of the pack. He's actually in the back.
Oh, I didn't know that. Really?
Yes.
I had no idea.
So
man.
you're talking about wagging the tail and being in the back of the room. I'm like, yeah, you're guiding the whole pack here.
I got goosebumps from head to toe here, man. Just you saying that. Dang.
All right. So how do people keep up to date with you so that when these things do start coming out, they're ready for them? Where do they find you?
I appreciate that. So, you can always go to my website, drjeffspencer.com. It's like a one-page, this is sort of what I do.
It is.
Question, reach out, it's not, and so that would be one way. I also have some things that I publish, weekly or monthly as relates to what I'm doing and what I'm thinking. And you can gain that access to that through my website, as well. And there will be other things to come. I'm on LinkedIn, modestly at this point in time. But stay tuned. There's going to be more of this to come. And so
nice. I'm looking forward to it, Jeff.
Yeah, man. Appreciate this opportunity. So
definitely be popping in and out of that website and looking up what Jeff's doing, because there's some big things coming. I know it. And definitely stay tuned to the next episode of The Hardy Brain, the show that takes athletic, introverted entrepreneurs and leaders and transforms them into ironclad brain performers. Take care.